Ronnie out here wildin'. Then bowl in a china shop.
Somebody gonna have to pay for all the shit he breaking, Nick.
Now that we're halfway through Raising Kanan and with the writers completely turning the chessboard upside down, with Unique leaving us, I do think it's the perfect time to break down some death predictions for the home stretch. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Thomas family as a whole. We're going to see where they could end up with each of the characters by the end of season 3, except of course Jukebox and Kanan, for obvious reasons. We all know how their story ends up, but they will be relevant when it comes to a few other storylines and plots. Now we're also going to run through where a few of the other characters could end up, because we know this is a game that either ends in death or jail. Raising Kanan is a show which really has brought some realism to the Power universe, which the other shows don't have. So we're also going to look beyond death predictions. We're going to be taking a look at some other characters that could also end up in jail by the end of season 3, because I do get the feeling law enforcement will get a win or two. So we're going to run through the Thomas family, Ronnie, Famous, Detective Howard, Juliana, and a few other characters. As always, we're also going to be sticking to the evidence, facts, and findings to back up our theories when it comes to these death predictions or characters that could end up in jail for Raising Kanan Season 3. With the Thomas family, as I mentioned, we know Duke and Kanan are safe for however long the series does last, but we know it won't be the same for the rest. So what about Rock, Marvin, and Lou? Now I do think most of you guys will agree when I say Rock isn't just integral to the storyline going forward, she's arguably the best actress on the show. That's not to take anything away from anybody else, because London Brown, who plays Marvin, Malcolm Mays, who plays Lou, and everybody else, Raising Kanan has a huge stellar cast, and they've definitely picked the right actors for the right roles. But Patina Miller just brings something else to the screen, and I feel like she has a lot more story as well, so she's someone who I would say is safe. Now when it comes to the other two brothers, here's where it starts to get a little more complex, and we're going to start with Marvin. Marvin's evolution has been nothing but extraordinary, especially when we look at how his journey started versus where it is at this moment in time. But that's why I also worry for him, both when it comes to law enforcement aspect and also when it comes to death. From a death standpoint, I think this will be Duke's tipping point when it does eventually happen, which I personally don't think will be until at least season 4. I do think Marvin will make it out of season 3, but eventually I do see him being the catalyst that will make Duke turn really cold because of how they're building this relationship. We know that nothing ever lasts in power, so let's see what happens in the home stretch when it comes to Marvin and Duke, but also Marvin and law enforcement. I previously mentioned that we need to keep close tabs on the investigation. Dean was said to be breaking off Marvin a bit of product, which he was moving to these Wall Street guys, and then there's also Gerald the journalist. Whether any of them could be undercover or could hinder Marvin in any way, I do think we need to keep an eye on it, because I do feel like law enforcement will get a win. When it comes to law enforcement, Marvin, Famous, and Detective Howard, all three are potential candidates who in my opinion are in big trouble, and I'll run through the other two in just a moment, but Marvin really does need to be very careful, especially around Gerald Moore. Now when it comes to Lou, he's the one who I think would be the first of the Thomas siblings to bite the dust. Whether that happens in season 3 or 4, I'm not too sure, but this is an exclusive clip from episode 6 with Lou being back on the drink, which is something I'm sure we all knew would happen sooner or later, but how far does he spiral out of control? That's the question. Does he then start to hinder the Thomas family and start to become a real problem? Could D-Wiz's brother come back and seek revenge? That's a theory I raised straight after he had this hallucination scene of Scrappy and D-Wiz. I really do think something will give when it comes to Lou by the end of season 3. Whether he gives up on life like his father did, who knows? Or personally what I would like to see is D-Wiz's brother being introduced and him looking for answers for what happened to D-Wiz. There's also the question of who has a gun to his head. So even though I am kind of torn on Lou's character, if I was to go out on a limb and give my honest prediction, I would say Lou is the first character on my death predictions list, which I think could potentially come by the end of season 3. Now Scrappy's mom is someone who I do think goes hand in hand with Lou. We just spoke about Lou having a hallucination scene of both D-Wiz and Scrap, and I think this is a storyline that does have unfinished business.
Talk to your mother. Tell her to do something. Because if she don't, I will.
Scrappy's mom could well and truly still be a problem in the future, because let's not forget, one key detail, she was a snitch. Detective Howard got it mixed up between Scrappy and his moms around who the snitch was, and he gave the wrong name to Rock, which of course ended in his death. So Scrappy's mom Chantel is one to watch, especially with her being a former snitch and with law enforcement sniffing around. But having said that, I do think she is a character the writers can easily write off, being another body to add to Rock's list, and the same goes for Juliana. We all know this is something that will definitely come back round to. Joaquin even teased that she needs to watch her back. So Scrappy's mom and Juliana are two characters I will be adding to my list along with Lou. Now, what about Sean, famous Figueroa? This is a character who I do think he will eventually meet his fate, but with the theme of this video being characters either ending up dead or in jail, we're gonna consider both.
You gonna have a problem, Famous.
It's not even like
It's
that.
exactly like that. I'm scary too, motherfucker.
So we do know he's gonna tell Kanan that it was his mom who put the gun in his backpack, and we also know he's gonna create a song named 411, where he raps about Freddy, someone who he was questioned about. So Famous I can actually see going either way. I can see him biting the dust because he is way too much of a liability. He's gonna stupidly rap about Freddy, and also because, let's not forget, the older Kanan didn't have a son named Sean. I don't think it's a coincidence that Famous's name is Sean, and then later we're gonna see Kanan naming his son after his best friend. So you do have to think by the time Kanan does have Sean with Jarita, not Aisha, and that's another quick side note. I have been reading a lot of comments with many thinking Aisha could be Sean's mother, but that's not actually true. Let's not forget, we did meet Sean's mom in OG Power in season 2, who went by the name Jarita, so that's just something to be mindful of, and I'm sure the writers have done their due diligence, just like we have. But on Famous, by the time Kanan does have his son with Jarita, you do have to think something big must have happened with Famous for Kanan to then name his son after his best friend. Now, whether he dies or goes to jail by the end of season 3, as I mentioned, this is one which could go either way, but if I were a betting man, then I'd lean more towards him self-snitching with 411, and law enforcement picking up a small win. So let's see what happens with Famous in the home stretch. Now, sticking with law enforcement, this brings me on to Detective Howard. He's someone who I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon. Not in season 3 anyway. I do see Howard being with us in season 4. But the question with Howard is, how deep will law enforcement look when it comes to his connection to Rock and also Detective Berg's death? Agent Tanner did question Howard around the investigation of his shooting, so I do think this was a reminder by the writers that they haven't forgotten. Howard is in some deep shit, so let's see if he can wiggle his way around, or if his picture ends up on Agent Tanner's desk at some point in the investigation. So Howard I can see surviving, but his problem is the same as Marvin and Famous, which is with law enforcement. So Marvin, Famous and Howard are my 3 top candidates to potentially be wins for Agent Tanner. Now over to arguably the most wanted character in the Power universe at this moment in time, Ronnie Mathis. Where do we see his story arc ending in the home stretch? This is one which has actually stumped me because I don't think anybody was expecting Ronnie to do what he did to Unique, and that does change a lot. I thought Ronnie would have been the brother that would have bit the dust towards the end of season 3, but the writers really did the unexpected. Although, do they kill 2 brothers in one season? I'm not too sure. So I am actually 50-50 on this one, but again, Grantham Coleman has been casted to play a lead role in another TV show, and how do you keep a menace like Ronnie around in the long term? He's creating a lot of enemies, he's going to be poisoning Kanan's mind, and he will have to pay for his sins sooner or later. Now, whether it's at the end of season 3, I am a bit torn on this one, but look, this video is a predictions video, so I do have to go with one or the other. And at this moment in time, I'm leaning towards Ronnie biting the dust. I do think Kanan will be his eventual downfall, very similar to how Tasha and Angela used Tariq to bring down the older Kanan. I can see the younger Kanan doing the same, so that's my prediction for Ronnie, Kanan being the one to stab him in the back and choosing Rock. Now elsewhere, maybe we need to keep an eye on Gerald Moore, who works on The Voice, along with Adina Foyle. With Moore, something just doesn't sit right with me about him being too pally-pally with Marvin, which is something I went through in a bit more detail in this. Now with Adina Foyle, does she buy Howard's story about Berg? So these 2 characters I do think we need to keep in mind. But with all of that being said, that's a breakdown of some death predictions, along with some characters who I do feel are in trouble with law enforcement. So just as a quick recap, we've got Juliana, Scrappy's mom Chantel, and potentially Lou and Ronnie biting the dust. I think Rock is safe, but Famous, Marvin and Howard I do think could be in trouble with the law. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Even if you disagree with some of my predictions, let me know in the comment section. Drop all your predictions down below for the home stretch of Raising Kanan Season 3. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.